Hi, I'm Justin. Thank you for jumping in. This is how to go from zero or $1,500 to $118,000 in 60 days. It's for e-commerce, CPG brands, sports and apparel brands. Really think of things that you sell on Shopify. All right, so I'm Justin, and this is going to be a very inside look at problems of one brand. And really some advantages they have. They don't really have as much, but how we work together to overcome these problems and really hit this. Take all that you can here. There is no need to sign up. There is no CTA. There is nothing here except for value. I very much believe in putting value out and value coming back. So this is going to be highly valuable if you are a CPG brand in the e-commerce space who uses Shopify or a similar platform. All right, with that, let's dive in. Let's get rid of my face and jump in here. Okay, so let's look at the brand, right? This is the starting metrics. Of course, I'm going to try to remove any information for the brand, but this was their metrics, right? They had $1,500 in sales. And really, that was it in a 60-day period. So this is the brand, and I'm going to list some of the problems and advantages they have and how these problems were categorized, overcome, or ignored because they weren't that important. One of the really big things that you have to understand as a brand is you have to categorize your problems. Your problems or advantages are product-based, marketing-based, which is everything marketing, including the marketing landscape, and owner-operator based, right? And some of these problems you can fix. Some owners, some operators are highly anxious, right? They have high anxiety. So anytime they spend, let's say $1,000, their anxiety will not allow them to let it just be spent and learn. They have to produce a return, or they micromanage their team. And because they micromanage that team, that anxiety keeps building and it doesn't get alleviated because they're not getting the results they want, so they turn. So all they're doing is they're steering a ship and they're going left, 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 and they just go in a circle. So that is a problem bucket as well. So I'm going to list the problems here and I'm going to drag them over into these buckets, and some are just ignored altogether. All right, so this brand here, they have an initial problem. They must have a return on ad spend, meaning they don't have a big budget, right? They don't have like $30,000 to spend to hopefully get brand awareness that will eventually turn into traffic. No, if they're going to spend $5,000, they need to get a return of $5,000. Now, it didn't have to be $5,000 to get a return of $50,000, even though it kind of turned into that later. But the next was they were using an ad buying software. They didn't feel comfortable in the ad buying platform, and that's fine. When we start, it's not about just replacing everything. If you have tools that work, let's keep it. But that was a problem for them because they didn't know how to use it. Next, they didn't have any ads active for 6 months. That's 6 months of nothing active at all. There's no ads, there's no campaigns, there's no Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram, TikTok, nothing. And this problem, this is listed twice. Don't know why it's listed twice, but let's get rid of that one. That one doesn't exist anymore. The next is they didn't know their persona. They had an idea, and by idea I mean like male 21 through 65, right? So really broad, super, super broad. And then the next problem is they didn't have data tracking set up properly, right? So GA4 converted, they kind of had universal analytics set up, but they really didn't have anything else. So you're kind of flying a bit blind, you would say, for this. Now they did have advantages. They had some wholesale customers, they had good margins, and they had the ability to create decent ads. So ad creative is a whole world in and of itself, but they had the ability to create decent ads. So I'd say like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, but not a 10 out of 10. And then another advantage was they had inventory. And so when they started, they came, to us and they said, hey guys, we really don't want to pay a bunch for an agency. What can we do to really begin to get some insights and some initial, just give us a pulse check. We don't want to spend $30,000. We don't want to spend $5,000, but we want to spend something to really see if we have what it takes to even try, or else we're going to spin our wheels, which is what they were doing with this ad buying software. They spent like $1,000 and then didn't even make $1,000 back. And then they spent like $500. They're like, oh, this is not working. But let's just see first if we have what it takes. So when they first started, they started with what we have is it's e-commerce consultation. So it's real low cost, but it gives people a chance to understand, okay, do I really need to go back to the drawing board or should I push? And so that's what they started with. And so when they started here, that's where we identified all their problems. We're like, okay, so here's the problems, here's our advantages, here's the next step, right? And so they did it for about a month, where it's like 1 month of here's the roadmap to get out of the quagmire that you're in and begin to actually have some success. And so that's where we started. So I'm going to begin to walk through really an accelerated what we did in those first 4 weeks and then what we did in the second 4 weeks. And by the way, the first 4 weeks was a lot of correction here. And then the second 4 weeks was here. This is where we're able to hit the gas, find what works, and then accelerate it. And it's still actually growing even beyond this now. So, all right, let's walk through it now. Okay, so when we were done really with that initial assessment, we were able to group the problems that they had. And if you look here, you get a real clean sense of where their problems were. They had a good product. They had sound enough owners. Obviously, they're able to get wholesale customers. They're able to create decent ads, but they really struggled here in the marketing space. Like they really didn't know much of what was happening, and that's okay. You don't have to, but they really knew their product enough to be able to have good margins, have a few wholesale customers. So they're not out there trying to sell, fidget spinners or something that everyone else is creating under the sun, and they're just drop shipping something that everyone's got, or trying to sell Apple iPhones or anything like that. But they really struggled in marketing. And so when we group those problems, then we group the solutions in the initial first step. And so how we started first was we assessed where the bleeding was, right? Here's the bleeding. If you have to have a return on ad spend and you are using what you think is a low-cost alternative, the reason why those things are low cost is because they're all dependent on the owner-operator. It's not just a marketing system, no matter how well they sell them. Like, this is an AI-based software problem. Things aren't just number-based. Most of the marketing has to do with your ability for risk and understanding the risk you're taking with certain ad spend, right? I'm going to test this persona. When you attempt to do that, experience tells you whether or not it's going to work or how much you should spend or what you're seeing in comparable to other brands. And so when they use this ad buying software, they would spend $300, and all these softwares do, I don't know, everyone's seen them. It's like, oh, create little subset audiences, spend $3, and you get addicted to clicking buttons, right? It's like, ooh, this is cool. I'm going to test this super hyper niche segment. And then they're creating all these little click buttons. And again, all it was producing was this. Kind of a hit or miss, really low conversion rate. They had the sessions, 1,500, but they weren't even converting the people that they were getting from these sessions other than a one-to-one. And they had spent just a little over this amount. And it's because they didn't know the platform they were using. And so it does no good to have this ad buying software without any experience behind it. Because when you don't have experience in it, you don't know ad management strategy or ad budgeting or how you spend. And it's almost like just trying to throwing your money out in the stock market. Like, I hope, fingers crossed, but you can't know what company you're investing in. You're just kind of throwing it out there. So anyhow, ramble done. But the big areas that we focused on was this, right? Without data tracking, you're kind of flying blind. So that was problem number one to address. And so then what we did is we said, okay, let's fix that. Here is a step-by-step on how you fix your data tracking. That was solved and corrected. Then next is here, the persona. That's more important than just turning on your ads. Even if you don't know your persona, it is the process, like what I'm doing here, of tracking what you're doing. That's where experience comes in, and writing it down, understanding, coming up with an idea of a persona. And for you guys that don't know what a persona is, this is a buyer persona. You come up with some ideas, an age, a gender, occupation, goals, frustration. Like, you fill this out. Because all it's going to do is give you a concept of what a persona is, so you can begin to then target based on the persona. Now, there's also a lot of difficulties with targeting them, but right now, if you don't have this, you are flying blind. Even if you spend money towards this persona and it doesn't convert, now you have an idea of a negative. Okay, this person doesn't buy. But if you don't start with the persona, what you're going to do is you're going to target little things like interests and someone who's into healthy eating for this customer. That could be a billion people, right? It's not a specific persona. So unless you're beginning to define the persona, you are flying blind and you're spending money on ads without really knowing who. And then you get focused on the product and the interests of people that would use your product, not the persona that buys your product, which is backwards. Like, think old school marketing and a persona is it. New school marketing is, I'm going to get lucky and target one little small niche and I'm going to get rich. Doesn't work like that. It always starts and ends with a person. If you don't define the person, you won't ever get there. So this was the next problem that was solved. Okay, so now that you've solved a persona problem and your tracking problem, why do you have to have both? You're going to drive the persona, and then with tracking, you can see what are the actions of the persona, because your problem could be your website, maybe not your ads. But if you've solved the tracking problem, now you know when you drive money to the persona, if you've really got a good persona, because not every persona is just going to buy, right? They'll add to cart, but not buy. But if you're not tracking add to cart, you don't really know. So anyhow, all right, so then we've solved those two problems. Then it came time for them, and they were still doing this themselves with their ad buying software. We were just initially consulting. We said, okay, it's time to solve this problem. Let's actually run active ads and campaigns so we can begin to see what worked. So next we launched persona campaigns, right? And it was instructed by us. Like they were still doing the ad buying software, but we said, okay, turn off 90% of it, right? 90% of what they were doing was just turn on this little niche campaign and this little niche audience. And they were just targeting all these little random interests. Remember the persona here, they were just targeting these little interests, like people who are interested in running, people who are interested in, watching sports, people who are interested in, healthy eating. Like they had like 15 different campaigns on all these random little things, but they weren't targeting the persona. So they really didn't know which one was working. But when they corrected this with persona campaigns, it was a step back. And what I mean by a step back is this. So when you're targeting an audience, right? And this down here is all audience targeting. You want to be a little more specific, right? 2.7 million is a specific criteria niche. You should do that if you know the persona is working. If you don't know, then you need to step back and zoom out a little bit. Facebook's been saying broad for years, but right now they're saying AI. A mixture between AI and broad is really the mix as long as it's defined persona. So 10.5 million is not that big, but it's big enough for a persona. And so we zoomed out from these little small niches to a 10.5 that hit persona number one. We said, okay, this is where you need to start your campaigns. Go. And then we said, okay, do this, do this, do this. And we found a few personas that won. Miracle. And so when we initially found some of those personas that won, that's then where we encountered some of our advantages. We had the ability to test our margins, right? Since we had good margins, and I think theirs were like a 40 or a 50% margin, we knew we could get past that break-even point just in testing personas. And so we said, okay, let's test personas and let's see what happens next. And now understand just vaguely here, the clock is ticking, right? They're like, hey, Q4 is coming up. We want to try. We've had our product sitting on the shelf for forever. I would never encourage anyone to wait till the 11th hour like this. I would say, okay, you need to test this January, February, March, and Q2. That way you have an idea of what success will be before Q4 for inventory budget, so forth. And so this is about where it started. And this is like, all right, test personas, but the clock's ticking. Let's rock and roll. And so then with our margins, we were able to test personas and we were able to get some decent returns. Let me see if I can bring up some of the ways we did that. Okay, hard to see, and I can't share the name of the campaigns because you'll know the exact brand, but we ran 3 different campaigns. Why 3? Why not 7? Why not 12? Because when you have limited budget, and even if you have a big budget, 3 is a powerful number when it comes to advertising, because it gives you the ability to test multiple things without putting all your eggs in one basket. We always call everything a column, right? It's impossible to stand a building or a stool with one stool leg. You need more than one. But if you have too many, it's a little bit of overkill, and it's more than a human can manage. And so we typically start with 3 3-legged stools. It works. We can sit. We can begin to learn. And so when we began our testing, we were able to find out several different things. One, what are our CPMs for our personas, right? $10 is a good CPM. It's actually phenomenal. But we were able to find a $7 CPM. Then we were able to test some of our creatives to these audiences, and we found similar things. One, you want to have a CTR over a 1% with a CPM of $10. That gives you a break-even number that it leaves it down to your site for conversion, site and product. But it's the right audience and the right click-through. And so we found, all right, a $13 CPM with a 1.5, and the break-even here is over the threshold. And so that told us, okay, these are the right personas. We have some a little bit better and some a little bit worse, but it gave us the ability to say, okay, now that we've tested our margins, let's dive deep and let's jump in. And so at this point, the owners and operators were still having a little bit of an issue here. But what we did was we solved the initial problems. Their testing gave them enough confidence. And then we said to them, honestly, guys, here's what we would do if we were you. We would double down in the persona that's working here. We would fix our creative here, and then we would begin to push. And at that rate of beginning to push, you'll get a critical mass of people into your funnel here in your sessions that you can then have remarketing, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. You can have offers. Then we can begin to manipulate the things that we do in marketing to get a good return. And of course, what they did is, it doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does, where they said, okay, that's great how you guys are giving us all these insights and videos and, breakdown in this consulting thing, but we don't have time, right? We don't know what we're doing. And every time you tell us, there's the delay of time. And then they were busy. I think one or two of them just had a kid. And so they were like, we don't have time. We're going to just punt the ball to you guys. And so they said, all right, this is not the ideal time. But right about here is where they were getting, some traction right in the late October. And they're like, you guys take it. And so then they passed it to us and said, okay, you guys take it from there and just rock and roll. And so then what we did is we took all the advantages that they had here, and then we scaled it with some really good offers. And offers and promos only add fuel, right? Now the offer and the product have to go hand in hand, right? If you have a product that doesn't really make sense to have a BOGO, let's say it's a $1,500 product, a BOGO really doesn't matter to that audience. But let's say you do. You have a product that's under the $50 threshold, which is critical. Look down here, $46. People don't have to think when they buy under $50. Over 50, which is they were trying to grow AOV, which was the problem. They needed to grow volume and keep their AOV right under the 50. Why? Because people buy things under $50 without thinking, considering, talking to a partner. Over $50, now you got to think about it, right? Under 50, for some reason, people think it's two $20 bills. Over 50, they visualize three $20 bills. And for some reason, that's not acceptable. And so we kept it under the $50 threshold. So we created a promo that allowed us to stay under that threshold and still push volume. Then we turned on what is accelerated marketing, or an experienced advertiser would come in and say, we just hit the freaking gas. And so I can show you this because this for us is how we do the breakdown. It's a simple funnel. Now within the funnel, it gets more complex and there's AI variations and Advantage Plus and all these other things, but the numbers are really this. When we drive, this much traffic, 16 grand through at their top of funnel, both in prospecting and in evergreen, which is, known winners, we were able to generate enough traffic to come down to the middle and bottoms to where we essentially were producing $20 in just pure profit at every single order. $20 in pure profit, every single order. All you need to do at that point is really hit the gas, which is what we did. We accelerated all of the traffic with what was happening based on the personas that were here. And with that good of a margin, we were essentially putting $20 in just pure profit in their pocket every single order that came through. So then what is the next issue that you have to overcome? Creative. Once you're spending and scaling at that rate, if you don't have the ability to create good creative, it will limit your frequency, their idea, their concept of the product. And then you've got one or two ads that you tested in a really small scale that don't scale. And if one of those ads fail, it's back to the stool. Things don't work. All right, so let me zoom out with that. So with that, we were able to really push them from here, where they were, to 118,000, with it being almost a 40% profit margin on every single product that was ordered. Now, what do? The first thing is this. You have to understand your problem buckets. Is it a product? Do you have advantage? Is it your marketing? Do you have advantage or disadvantage? And then you have to note it. And if you don't note it, then what you're doing is you're flying completely blind. And if you look at marketing, there's so many things you can do, from Facebook, TikTok, TV, Meta, Google, influencers, email. There's so many things out there in multiple places. It's overwhelming, which again is why we encourage everybody, you've got to write things down. So this is how a brand goes from really 1,500 to 118,000 in 60 days. Hope this was helpful. Hope it was insightful. Thanks.